Here we go.
I'm trying to catch the Reese's Pieces that got thrown in the audience right there. All right, hey, welcome to week 2 of Behind the Pulpit. We're so glad you're joining us here. Hopefully you're watching us live on YouTube. My name's Bob Urbig. I am the lead pastor for Preaching Spiritual... no, that's Dave, man. I got confused.
We miss him so much already.
He's gone. Lead pastor for Preaching Family Life and Mission, and I am joined here to my right by...
Rachel Rickershauser, Director of Children's Ministries.
Well, Rachel, welcome to your first episode of Behind the Pulpit. Does it feel like extra special, extra spiritual today?
Feels a little different, I have to say.
All right. Well, we're glad you're here today. If you are joining us and you watched last week, or if you're watching the graphic, if you don't know, Pastor Dave, my cohort here, he's on sabbatical for the next 4 months. Can you say 4 months? 4 months. It's a long time. And that's a blessing. I was able to do that last summer, so we really are just going to be praying for him and hope that he and the family have a good rejuvenating time. This summer, he'll be back with us the first week of September, and then I'm going to take some vacation. So anyway, so we're glad you're here for Behind the Pulpit. We are kind of doing a little bit of a different format here. We're going to have a guest, so Rachel's joining us today. And Rachel, I'm just going to ask you, how was your weekend? You have a good weekend?
Thank you. Yes. We celebrated my niece's first birthday.
Whoa.
So,
first birthdays are always fun.
yeah, it was sweet.
Yeah.
It was berry fun because it was strawberry themed.
Oh, that's right. When you're young, there's always a theme to your birthday.
Oh, yeah,
It's not just
yeah.
like, all right, let's go out for dinner. I got to have some kind of magical character that comes in.
Yeah.
Well, hey, so the second segment we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about church body life, things that are happening within the Millington world. And so, Rachel, you have some exciting things you want to share with us. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what's happening with the kids ministry?
Yeah, sure. So coming up, I guess just this weekend is the Mommy and Me art class. So I'm really looking forward to that. I think I've mentioned it a couple times on here. But again, just there's a few spots left if you just hearing about it. Just a fun time for moms or dads, whoever, to come and be creative with their kids. And thanks to Amy Newman for putting that on for us.
So Mommy and Me. So that means Mommy and a kid are going to come, or is there anybody else that's invited to these? To this?
Yeah. So dads are welcome. Caregivers. We've had grandmas come before. So we call it Mommy and Me because it sounds nice. Okay.
Okay.
But it's really open to anyone else who wants to come with their
I'd
kid.
probably want to go with my mommy too. If she wouldn't come with me.
Yeah. So that's a fun event coming up. But in kind of like much bigger news, we have something new coming up this fall.
Bigger news.
Yeah. Big news.
Breaking news right here.
It's kind of official
Rachel's
now.
running for president.
It's not like that big, but it's semi-official that we are going to start an Awana here at Millington.
Whoa, all right. What is
Yes.
Awana? What's that all about?
So Awana is like a midweek program for kids. It's focused on discipleship. Awana's been around for, I think we were talking 70 to 80 years. So
That long?
Yeah, it kind of has proven itself that it's still going and going strong. It's international, and they're just really known for how they help kids memorize scripture. And just learn Bible literacy, like they really focus on that. So it's like a supplement to our Sundays program.
Yeah. Well, Bible literacy, that's certainly something that's lacking in today's culture. I hear a lot of people talking about what the Bible says, and it's very clear they haven't read the Bible. So,
right. So we're passionate about discipleship here, and we're just going to bring another opportunity to do that. And so we're thankful we have Kimberly and Craig McLaughlin gonna direct that this year, and then we're getting the team together. So if you're hearing about this and this sparks a flame in you and passion for discipling kids, doesn't mean you have to be a teacher. There's so many roles out there, and they're not teaching roles.
Well, okay. So if you're interested, what's the next step? How can you get involved? Should I just be on the lookout for news? Should I actually contact somebody? Like, what should I do?
You should just pick up your phone and email me right now. I would love that.
All right. What's your email address? I forgot.
Easy. Rachel@millingtonbaptist.org.
Rachel@millingtonbaptist.org.
So, yeah, we're really excited. Something new, something fresh, and I know the Lord's going to provide. So we're kind of doing that in faith, but we're excited for that.
All right. Well, check out the website. Awana coming to a Millington near you in the fall. All right, so moving on to the next segment, we're doing this new thing where we're calling it, maybe we'll call it something else in the future, but we're just going to talk about something that's in the news, what's coming up in the news, and I think you and I both had the same idea of things we're thinking about. I was on an elder retreat yesterday, and we were chatting about this topic as part of just the implications for the church, and that's the topic of artificial intelligence, AI, which people have been talking about for a few years, but now it's sort of, kind of becoming the zeitgeist, the mode of discussion.
Hot topic in the news every week.
ChatGPT. I noticed that Elon Musk, he's got. Well, what's interesting about Elon Musk is he was before Congress testifying about the dangers of AI, but at the same time on the side he's starting to create a competing company to ChatGPT, and I don't know. I got a lot of thoughts about AI and some ethical issues and some things Christians need to think about. But what's your thoughts about that?
Yeah. So the one thing I read, maybe it was last week, but there was I forget what kind of art award it was, but a photography contest, and the guy won, but he declined to accept the prize because he confessed it was an AI generated photograph. And he was just like, yeah, I just wanted to see if you guys could figure it out.
Did he really? That was his...
Yeah. So
Man.
That was interesting. And then I was reading about AI generated songs, and this artist was saying, you can use my voice to create AI songs, but you got to give me half of what you make.
Okay, well, very fun. So I was thinking, and I do think there's some positives that can come from it, but as with any technology, there's things that need to be thought about, and a lot of times people create things without thinking philosophically, theologically, ethically about what could be the downfalls. So I think one of the things the church is going to have to wrestle with and is going to have to teach on is the question: what does it mean to be human? What does true human connection look like? Dave, actually, last week he sent me a note that there's this new, I don't even know if you would call it a social media app, but it's something called Replica, where basically it's a chat bot that's going to act like, if you want a friend, join Replica, and it'll talk to you back and forth. I saw the guy who used to run Google. He was talking about in the future, in the near future, you might have your kids who are you might get a teddy bear that can then talk to your kid, and they might think that's a friend. So what does it mean to be a human being?
There will no longer be invisible friends. There will be
yeah. And there's been some scary movies playing out that concept right there. So
I have concerns about like creativity, where, are we going to still be fostering creativity in the kids and teens in our lives,
Well, now what's interesting, and maybe I'll end the segment on this idea. I heard somebody talking about the idea that the reason AI, what the AI systems do right now is they basically scour the internet and see everything that we've created and put in there. But if we start becoming reliant upon that and stop creating, we may become dumber, but also the AI may become dumber as a result.
Okay, yeah.
If that's how the algorithms work.
Oh, wow.
So,
yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, but it is something Christians are going to have to think about, and I think we'll have to do some teaching on it in the near future.
Yes.
So,
want to hear what y'all pastors have to say about that.
That's right. So check out the AI. Keep an eye on that. We'd love to have questions about that in the coming weeks and months. All right, so let's jump on to the main section, the kind of the sermon and questions section of our Behind the Pulpit time today. And unfortunately, Dave, like I mentioned, he's not here, although he preached yesterday on the end of Philippians chapter 1. And he talked about, verse 27 says that the exhortation from Paul is that we should let our manner of life be worthy of the gospel of Christ. And if you remember, Rachel, he used that word polytuma. It's the Greek word that's used there, which is where we get our word for politics. But and we have a certain view of politics, but really the word talks about how the entirety of our life should be matching up with being changed by Jesus Christ. And then he gave us 4 different examples of how we should do that. He talked about let's see if I can remember them. Standing firm. There was a striving one, right?
Strive valiantly.
Strive valiantly.
Good word.
Pursuing unity, something about pursuing unity. And then the last one was, help me out with the last one.
Suffer fearlessly.
Suffer fearlessly. So those things, I think, kind of work together because in our current moment and what Christians are experiencing, those all apply in a variety of ways. I don't know. What was your thoughts, general thoughts on the sermon? I thought he did a great job. Good ending for his before he's going on a sabbatical.
Yeah.
If you're watching, Dave, I'll give you a thumbs up. I'll give you 2 thumbs up. There you go.
Yeah, I thought it was great. I think like all of us can relate to this in some way, even though as someone on staff at a church, it's like I feel I work with Christians and that's like majority of my life. But of course there are people in my life, friends and family members who don't know Christ. So of course I'm like always thinking about this too for my own personal life. So I think it really resonates.
Yeah. Do you think working on staff at a church we're insulated from this a little bit, or?
I think it depends on you almost have to like pursue those people more in your life that aren't believers.
Yeah.
Or put yourself in those places.
Yeah, that's a great observation.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this week we actually got a couple questions in. And so if you are watching this, just a reminder that we are hoping to get more questions in that we can interact with based on what was presented in the message. Or, if you just have a general theological question and want to put us on the spot, we are more than happy to give that a try in the coming months. We want to get some audience engagement here. So 2 questions. One was based in response to the sermon yesterday, and then the other one was in response to the sermon the week before. So I'm going to start with the harder question, Rachel, because I think all the points that we talked about kind of tie in with what this person is asking. So, and it's a long question, so I'll just summarize. The person says in Dave's message today, he said, "Citizens of heaven stand firmly and also seek unity." So they were kind of dialing into those 2 points that he made. And the struggle that this person is having is that they have a family member who decided to transition from being a man to being a woman. And there's a whole lot of ripple issues that are related there. This person is bringing up, how does it not just affect me, but my daughter and then my grandkids and all that. And then, there's a host of issues there. But the question they're asking at the end, which I think is a great question, the question is, what does standing firmly look like in this situation, and what does unity look like? And, this has been weighing them down, and there's uncharted waters. How do we handle this? And I think, and I want you to jump in here, but the first thing I would say here is that I love this question. I don't know if you love this question. People are saying out there, "What, you love it?"
Even though it's heavy, tell us why.
Because this is things that people are dealing with right now. And the church often is reticent to actually dive into these waters because there may be repercussions. You know.
Do you mind just mentioning, sorry, really quick, like how this person's connected? Because I thought that was interesting.
Okay, all right. So I was trying to make this shorter summary.
Sorry.
So this person has a daughter-in-law, and it's the daughter-in-law's father who is doing the transition. That was the general relationship.
I just want to point out, it's not like this person's son or daughter. It's an older person.
Yes. Yeah, and
just pointing that out.
Yeah, and again, I love the question because this person is genuinely wrestling with what do I do in this situation. I think they're asking the right questions, and thank you so much for submitting that.
Yeah.
So. Now, in terms of response, I think I'm going to come at this from 2 angles. And if you have another angle you want to bring in, feel free to jump in there. I think when questions like this arise, let's just admit that these are emotional issues. We're talking about relationship here, and we're talking about worldview here. We're talking about a lot of different things. So the first response I think that a lot of Christians often miss is that there's a way of responding pastorally. Which is getting at, when you think about grace and truth, we're getting at the grace piece and understanding that we're all made in the image of God. We're all affected by sin and brokenness to some extent. And sometimes we have a tendency to put, that person over there is the one who's really the sinner. And we can put ourselves on a pedestal. So I think that there is, and I sense this in the question here, that there is an empathy for, man, this is hard. I care about these people. They're being affected by this. And so I really want to resonate with the person who's asking the question, and also the person who's making this decision. How do you get to a point of making that decision is what I think about when I read this question. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that. You're not afraid to take this on, and and I like how you and Dave have preached on this topic already. So, just getting like an actual situation to talk through is good. It's good.
Yeah. So there is a pastoral response to that, and empathy, and sitting with person and listening. A couple years ago, we had Mark Yarhouse come in, who actually wrote. I've been researching this topic for years, literally at this point. I think I first came. I was reading through the kind of the LGBTQ issues in the literature that was out there in the sphere, and nobody, at least from an evangelical perspective, was writing about transgender or gender dysphoria except for Mark Yarhouse. I'm taking this back to like 2015, 2016. Yep, who's saying something about this?
Yeah.
And he wrote a really good book about gender dysphoria. And when we had him come in and speak, one of the things that he said was, if you've met one person who's wrestling with this, you've met one person. Like everybody has different reasons for this, and there is a brokenness that we all experience, that this somehow is getting manifested this way.
Yeah. I remember still going to a conference to see him speak, that one day thing we did. And it was eye-opening. Like, it really did encourage that empathy piece that I think sometimes when we hear on the news, even me, like, I can feel like so like defensive, like, oh, like, why is this happening? And like, what are these people thinking? But you have to bring it down to that individual and like what they could have been going through their whole lives.
Yeah, so that's the first piece. So great question. There's an empathy piece to this. There also is, so there's a response pastorally, and then there is a response theologically. Okay, so we do believe there is truth. We do believe the Bible does speak to these issues. And what's interesting is I hear people quote nowadays in kind of the broader culture, they're bringing up Genesis 1:26-27. And they only mention the first part of the verse, that we're all mentioned in the image of God, and fail to neglect the second part. What does it mean to be made in the image of God? To be made male and female. And so there is God created us male and female with distinctions, and there's some biological issues that come up, things like intersex and things like that, which are very small, but by and large we're talking about male and female. So I think in terms of standing firmly, I think one of the things that people, if you're a Christian, you have to recognize that if you're going to stand firm on what the Bible says, there is going to be a cost. There is going to be a cost today. And I think people are starting to experience that. And then they're also starting to think about this issue from, it's not just this person saying this, people are bringing these thoughts into the realm of education and younger kids and entertainment. It's everywhere within the culture. It's hard. Like, I don't know how you feel about this, Rachel, but there's times I feel like I don't even know if I can go out in the month of June.
Oh, yeah.
I can't even go to Target, I take my kids out there. So what does it look like to stand firm? And I do think it's right to stand on your convictions, but you also have to understand that there's a cost to that.
Yeah. So, I'll chime in here. Like, I think that in this situation, what does that look like? I like that it already sounds like they are showing some empathy. And then also but standing firm. Well, that means like, you can love that person, but not like celebrate that change in that person that the person has made, and like there's a grandson involved. Okay. So, and just being honest with the person's son and daughter-in-law, like, hey, like I want to love on this person still, but I actually don't agree. And like, I'm really concerned how this is going to come across to my grandson. Can we talk about that? I don't know if that's appropriate, but I think it's a place to start, like being honest and open. Yeah, no, I think that's a great response. Now, the second part of the question is, what does unity look like? And this is where I think it gets a little bit more tricky because, even what you just said, I think I can love the person, I can let them know I disagree, just not celebrate. The problem is that in the culturally speaking, that is what people want. That if you do not celebrate, you do not fully affirm, then you don't believe I exist. You don't believe we can't even talk. You are committing violence against me. Yeah. Right. And that's where it gets really, really tricky and really hard. And that's why I'm saying that there's a cost to that. Yes. Even now, I mean, YouTube's listening to what I'm saying, so we'll see what happens. Well, yeah, and that's where you have to, like, it does require courage to make that
yes,
first
and that's
step.
that striving valiantly part that Dave said, I think is applicable here.
It's going to take courage because
know?
you don't know how that person's going to, in your personal life, you know how the internet's going to react to you, okay? Let's be honest. But you don't know how that person in your
Convulsions.
life is going to react. They might react in love too. It's like, okay, thank you for being honest with me. And, we can hope for the best in that. But I think honesty and being real is, in my opinion, always the best, even though it's hard.
Yeah, and I think we need to learn more about that. We need to teach our kids that if they're going to follow Christ, there's going to be a difference. We're going to go against the grain. Yeah. Now the other piece I would say with this is that this thinking is there is debate even within the Christian church. Okay, that some of the thoughts are coming in, and some people are saying, well, biblically, either I don't want to deal with this issue; it's a secondary issue. I personally do think this is the main issue, and this is the thing that we need to because to some extent we are talking about reality. What do you believe about reality? And if you get that wrong, then you're going to make a lot of other bad assumptions about what's going on. So the first thing I would say about unity does not mean we agree. Does not mean we always agree. And some people think that if we're going to have unity, we all have to agree on the same point. But unity does not mean unanimity. Unity really is displayed out when we learn how to disagree well and still come together on the core tenets. So when you start to get away from the core tenets of the gospel and things that are clear within Scripture, it's really hard to have true unity. I don't even know if you can have true unity in that case.
Okay. That's a good point. I think all of us kind of
there are things where there's even you see John Mark and Paul and there was a splitting of ways over whatever the issue was, and there are things that we need to say I can't agree on that.
Yeah, there are reasons to, as you mentioned, part ways. But I love that reminder. I think we need that. We all chuckled during the sermon, right, when Dave said, "Oh, I just can't imagine Christians not agreeing on something." So I think we all laughed because we know, but we need that reminder still. Yeah.
So unity in this case. If I don't know the people's spiritual backgrounds here, but if they are believers, I would gently and lovingly point out what Scripture says. You might even need to do a deeper dive on that and present that to somebody. But it may be that there might not be unity possible in this case, and that's also something to recognize. Yeah, but that doesn't mean you still can't love the person, you still can't pursue them, you still can't. We can't agree here, Yeah. And it's hard because it may mean loss of relationship, loss of job, increasing loss of finances, and that's going to become more of a reality for people. Yeah. And it's hard.
I'll just maybe close this out with saying the last point that in Dave's sermon was suffering fearlessly. And, this is not something we want to hear, right? Like that. But Jesus actually guarantees that we will have suffering, that we will suffer. And if it's because of him, then that was how the gospel was shown to be beautiful. I wrote that down. Dave said that. So
yeah. Actually, so you just made me think about resources I wanted to mention. So I mentioned the Mark Yarnhouse stuff. Just kind of understanding the general perspective. The other one that's was a really popular book that's come out in the last couple of years is Carl Trueman's book. He had a really big book called I'm forgetting the title of the longer one. The shorter one is called Strange New World, and it's called How Thinkers and Activists Redefined Identity and Sparked the Sexual Revolution. And this book is important because what he does is he traces how this thought, particularly around the transgender stuff, has become just assumed within the culture. So he said, the reason I started writing this book was, I wanted to understand how the phrase "I'm a woman trapped in a man's body" just became understood, like just assumed. He said, if I asked my grandfather that 20 years ago, it would have made absolutely no sense. No sense. Yeah. And now from a cultural perspective, that's just like, that's just normal. How did we get there?
Yeah, how do we
and how do you get it to a point where statistics will tell you Generation Z, there's like 25-30% that are somewhere on the LGBTQ spectrum? Is that wow. Because that's being out there and assumed, like normalized in the culture, or is it because people were repressed in the past? I tend to think it's a little bit of the former, even if there were people that did not feel like they could be honest about what they were wrestling with. And to be fair, there are people I do think who wrestle with this stuff. But the way the culture is going, it's really hard to kind of address things honestly because you have to agree or you can't talk.
Like, are they even, I haven't looked into this, but gender dysphoria as a,
no, gender dysphoria is a real thing.
Right.
Yes.
It's a real thing. But now is that even being like talked about as a thing, or is it just becoming, transgender?
You read the new DSM 5 or 6, whatever it is. I doubt it's going to be considered a.
Yeah. That's concerning. Yeah.
So anyway, that probably maybe longer than you wanted, but it is a complicated issue, and I do think it's something to really wrestle with, to pray through, to research, to ask. Honestly, I think more and more nowadays we're just going to say, Holy Spirit, you need to help me, and you need to give me guidance.
That's right, and every situation is a little bit nuanced, a little bit different. So
yeah. All right, so let me move on to the second question that we'll wrap up with, and this is a little bit of an easier one, I think. Right. So it's not based on yesterday's sermon; it's based on the sermon the week before.
Oh, okay.
So this person writes, it's a week late, but in last week's sermon, so the middle 1:12 to 26, I was actually supposed to preach that, but then I got sick, and Dave stepped in. Dave talked about joy, standing for Jesus, others, then yourself. How do you follow that model today when society is so self-centered? Like yourself, finding yourself inside, all expressive individualism.
Self-care and
how do you
first.
How do you put yourself in a tertiary, in a secondary position when all society is telling you it's all about you? So I'll let you take that one.
Oh, wow. Thank you. I did manage to listen to the sermon, but it wasn't yesterday, so I got to think. Well, yeah, I think just I think this is also, you see it in Philippians chapter 2, right? Coming up too about, and then even yesterday in the sermon, we did talk about that, about not looking to your own interests first. Self-regard dies at the foot of the cross. Yeah, I think you have to take it and like filter what the culture says through the gospel, right? Kind of like with everything, but you have to filter it. Like, yes, I thought of self-care because like as a mom with little kids, okay, am I taking care of myself? Because then you don't have enough energy to care for your kids, right? But that doesn't mean I need to be like having a whole day to myself and doing these a long selfish thing. I can do small ways. So I think it's just take what the culture says and then like what how can we filter that through? Self-care can be a good thing, but if you take it a step far, then it can be selfish. Yeah.
So I think that I agree with that. I think that's a really great point. I think our mode is to think of ourselves first. That's kind of where sin ultimately comes from. So it's always I'm thinking about me rather than others. And the model that Christ gives us, which is what we're going to talk about this upcoming week in Philippians 2, very famously in Philippians 2, is that Jesus, left his place on high, came down for the sake of us, died on a cross so that we could have life. And now that does not mean that there's not times to think about what would be the most healthy thing for me to do. But when that becomes the centrality of who we are, when it's all about discovering myself and focused on me, I think there's consequences to that.
I think you're right in that, like, it's the most natural thing to think of yourself first. So it's almost like, okay, you don't even have to work on thinking about yourself, right? That's easy to do. But let's actually try to think about the other person first.
Well, and in reality, I think the Jesus, others, yourself, you think about what is the great commandment that Jesus gave us? Love God, love others. And when you really step back and say, how do I truly understand what my purpose is here in this world? Why did God create us? Is to love him, to give him glory, and to love our neighbor as ourselves.
As yourself, because you're going to naturally love yourself.
Yes. And so I think this is what, and even now I have to do some more digging into this, but I was meditating upon this yesterday. So the Philippians 2, talks about Philippians 2:4. Let each of you look not only to his own interests, but also to the interests of others. Now, one of the things I thought about that I didn't really consider before is that he says not only, which means that maybe your interests are a piece of it, but when you're only thinking about yourself, that becomes a problem.
Yes.
Now, I have to do the Greek word study, and we'll see what I come up with on Sunday. But that was something I thought about, that there's a piece of you, but ultimately people are thinking only about themselves, and then there's destruction that's going on along the way. So to the question was, how do you do that in a society that's so self-centered? I think we sort of answered it in the opening question, that you are just going to have to recognize the cultural lies that are out there and stand up against them. Mm-hmm. So it requires some introspection and also some firmness in how you live.
Yeah.
I don't know. Rachel's going to solve it for us. So,
but hey, with that comes joy.
She's going to run for president and solve everything.
I don't know about that. But yeah, I mean, with that comes joy. So, hopefully eventually you see that it's worthwhile.
That's right.
To put that aside.
Worshiping Christ, living for Him is what will really bring you joy. Mm-hmm. And I think people do not get that. Mm-hmm. All right, so I think we've exhausted the sermon. We're looking forward to Philippians 2, 1-11 this upcoming week. We're now coming to the wrap-up section. We're just a couple minutes behind here, Tim, but you know what? Tim is going to start giving us a question for our 60-second theology sprint at the end here.
All right,
and you're welcome, Rachel, to give this a crack, but Tim's going to throw us a question. I'm going to see if I can answer it in 60 seconds or
I'm
less.
excited to be the observer here. All right, let's do it.
So I know we're a little strapped for time, but I do have 3 options for you, and I'll give you the topics. So
okay, Tim is. Should I repeat these back because I can't hear you?
You can hear me. I think they can hear me. But
okay, all right.
You can repeat
I'll repeat them anyway. So.
First option
3 options. I get multiple choice.
is in the realm of like truth. The second option is multi-religion based.
Multi-religion. Okay.
And the third one involves hell. So you can pick which.
I don't know. Rachel really loves talking about hell, so let's go with the hell one.
Let's
okay.
Do it. Bring it on, Bob. Bring it on. I mean, for you, not for me.
Today's 60-second theology sprint isn't hell an unreasonable punishment for not believing in a specific set of truth claims?
Isn't hell an unreasonable expectation for not believing in a specific set of truth claims? Well, I guess that is determined based on who you think sets the rules, right? Mm. So if you think that humans should be the ones who determine what's fair and what's just, then I can understand why you would think it's unreasonable. But I don't believe that. I don't think Christians believe that. Christians believe that we have a sovereign God who is holy, and he can do whatever he wants. And so it actually would be I heard one of my friends say this one time. It actually would be unjust if God did not punish anybody, because then sin would not be justly punished. God Himself came and died on a cross so that our sin could be punished and we could be saved. And if you choose to reject that, then yeah, punishment is just, because God is a holy God. He puts out sin. He must punish sin, and he offered atonement. And if we choose to reject that, C.S. Lewis very famously said that when people go to hell, they're getting what they want. So the reality is that people don't want to choose God apart from God intervening in their lives and saving them.
Separation from God.
That's right. That's right. So no, I think the short answer is no. I don't believe that.
All right.
How did I do, Rachel?
I thought that was good.
All right.
Well done.
I'll write a paper about it next, so it's a little bit longer than the snippet. Alrighty, so anyway, that's it for this week behind the pulpit. Rachel, thanks for having me. We got to bring you back. Maybe you should be here every week this
summer.
That was fun.
A lot of fun. I don't know about every week, but
all right. Every other week.
It's not special if it's every week.
Well, it becomes consistent then, right? All right. Well, thanks so much. We hope to see you next week for Behind the Pulpit, and if you choose to join us for the services this week, we are at 9 and 10:45, www.millingtonbaptist.org. You can find out the details, or subscribe to our NBC